Hey guys, what's going on? Blade the Striker here. This is going to be my first of hopefully many League of Legends guides, and today I'll be showing you how to play one of my personal favorite champions, the Lady of Clockwork, Orianna. She is a very complex and unique champion in the sense that her ball is a very different mechanic from others, and if used correctly can devastate the enemy team at all elos. I will be showing you how to correctly play and build Ori, and once mastered, you can carry with her from any rank. I'll start with a summary and list of scalings of Orianna's abilities, so if you wish to skip past her basic abilities then click the annotation on the screen. Credits of the summary and scaling pictures goes to the LoL Wiki. Starting with Orianna's passive, Clockwork Windup, it reads, Orianna's auto attacks deal scaling bonus magic damage on hit. Any subsequent auto attacks on the same target generates a stack of Clockwork Winding, increasing Clockwork Windup's damage by 20%, stacking up to 2 times. The stacks reset if Orianna attacks a different target or doesn't attack for 4 seconds. So your auto attacks do bonus ability power, and if you attack the same target multiple times in a row, it does bonus auto attack magic damage to that target, stacking the 2 times. Orianna's Q, Attack. Orianna commands the ball to fly forward towards the target location, dealing magic damage to all enemies that the ball passes through or that are in the target area. However, the ball deals 10% less damage for each subsequent target hit, down to a minimum of 40% damage done. So basically you move the ball in any direction and it does damage through enemies it passes, losing 10% damage for each enemy unit it passes through, down to a minimum of 40% damage done. The ball also stays at the position unless you go out of range. Orianna's W, Dissonance. Orianna commands the ball to emit an electric pulse around its current location, dealing magic damage to enemies within 250 range and leaving an electric field on the area for 3 seconds that speeds up allies and slows enemies that walk over it. The effect diminishes over 2 seconds after leaving the area. Basically, it does damage in a small area around the ball, slows enemies, and speeds up teammates, diminishing over 2 seconds. Orianna's E, Protect, has a passive and an active. The passive reads, the allied champion the ball is currently attached to is granted bonus armor and magic resistance. Active. Orianna commands the ball to fly and attach onto an allied champion, dealing damage to enemies it passes through and shielding the allied champion for 4 seconds when it arrives. So she shields an allied champion or herself, and it does damage to all enemy units it passes through while traveling to the shielded target. Orianna's R, Shockwave. Orianna commands the ball to unleash a shockwave after 0.5 seconds, dealing magic damage to enemies within 400 range and flinging them into the air 350 range towards and possibly over the ball. So basically after a short delay, all enemies are pulled into range of the ball and dealt a massive amount of damage. I'll also get into the skill order in a little bit. Now on to runes and masteries. The ones shown on the page are taken from a game Bjergsen from Team Solo Mid played Orianna in a solo queue game, and these runes are good in all situations. You have the AP Quints for early damage, the Hybrid Pen Reds since Ori auto attacks often, and I will go more in depth about this in a minute. The Scaling Health Yellows are good to keep you alive in the mid to late stages of the game, and the Scaling AP Blues are good for a lot of mid to late game power spikes. The Masteries are quite standard. The utility page is great for longer blue buff duration and mana regen, and the Dangerous Game Mastery is great for clutch teamfights. Also, the 5% bonus AP on auto attack is insanely powerful when paired with Ori's already strong auto attack passive. Now into the game, you have 2 choices depending on the lane matchup. You can start with your E or Q. The E start is good if you plan on auto attacking the enemy laner a lot, which is what you should try to do in lane as Ori. Since she runs out of mana quickly before getting her items, auto attacking is her main source of harass, and it does quite a bit of damage. Good to start versus melee champions that can't gap close to you often. The Q start is for ranged champions who you can't auto attack. This is good because you can farm safely from level 1, doesn't use too much mana if you keep track of your mana expendage, and is a decent harass tool while farming. You'll want to max your Q first on Orianna. The reason you do this is because ball positioning is the most important mechanic you can have on Ori alongside timing. The cooldown is lowered on her Q, so that means you can create more pressure with more ball movement, and that also means better wave clear, harass, and sustain damage. It is possible to do a W max, but that is more of a burst order than sustained damage, and Ori excels in the sustained damage while still providing decent burst. E-max really isn't recommended as you lose out on a lot of damage and ball movement, and it would be better to just stay under turret to prevent harass rather than maxing E first. Build order should be Athene's, Morellonomicon, Sorcerer Boots, Rabadon's Death Cap, Void Staff, Zhonya's, and the last item can either be a defensive item like a Banshee's Veil or another damage item like a Liandry's if you aren't being focused. Orianna loves cooldown reduction and raw ability power, and expends mana quite quickly, so the Athene's tends to those three needs, and so does the Morellonomicon. However, you may run out of mana more quickly on Orianna with the Morellonomicon. After that, Rabadon's is good for a lot of mid-game damage in team fights. The Void Staff is a good pickup to keep up your high damage output and not let enemies' resistances get in the way. Zhonya's is a really good defensive item as it gives good raw ability power, the 50 armor is nice, and the active is very powerful and flexible. It can be useful in any situation in almost every game. The last item is whatever you think you need, more damage or defense, and Sorc Boots somewhere in between after your first item for early Magic Pen. I'll also get into different build orders that you can do. In lane, you'll want to try to auto-attack harass your enemy laner as much as possible. It is a no mana costing way of easily getting off early damage onto your laner. Level 1 is very important on Ori, as it is on every other champ, because you can set the pace of the lane. If you can harass your laner while they farm, you can establish an early dominance in the lane, and you get to free farm if you can get them low enough. Try to farm as much as you can while harassing. However, farm should be your main priority while laning as Ori, as she's quite useless without an item or two. Also note that you don't have to follow this exact build that I said earlier, and you can alter it. For example, if you're versus a full AD composition, you can go Tear of the Goddess and Morellonomicon for the cooldown reduction, mana regen, and ability power for an early item power spike. I wouldn't recommend just Morellonomicon without the Tear of the Goddess, as you would run out of mana at the worst of times. You can also rush Seeker's Armguard then Tear of the Goddess to make sure you can farm without getting harassed out of lane quickly. There are multiple different build paths, so don't feel pressured to follow just one set build in the same exact order. I just gave a very generic build that is very effective on Orianna and works in almost all situations. In the mid game, you want to try to continue to farm, but while doing so, wave clear and try to harass the enemies. Ori can harass the enemies from a relatively safe distance, depending on who you're playing against, so use that to your advantage. You can chunk enemies by around 30% of their health at the very least if you're even in farm or ahead, assuming that they're not stacking all magic resistance. Continue to farm, and if possible, try to force teamfights as Orianna excels in this situation. She has excellent objective control, zone control, and wave clear. The reason for her immense zoning and objective control is because of the shockwave. One good shockwave can turn an entire team fight around, and if used properly can be devastating and turn a game. Don't rush to use your shockwave, try to be patient with it. As the team fights go on, I can guarantee you that the enemies will forget about your ball. That is where maxing Q comes in handy, as you can position it more and get better opportunities to get off nice shockwaves. However, make sure that you can get off the shockwave on the carries at the very least, even if you can't hit their full team. Don't forget to use your shield as well in teamfights. This is very powerful and can save your front line from a lot of damage and poke. Also be careful of the noob mistake of shockwaving while the ball is on you. You may lose track of the ball in a team fight as well. Think it may be in the middle of their team, shockwave, and realize it was on you the whole time. Great for scaring them away. Anyways, as you get into the late game, you're a monster. Assuming you're keeping up in farm or not behind, you can do an insane amount of damage. Just play like how you would in the mid game, but play extra safe. The death timers are insanely long and you need to be sure that you stay alive, because if you can stay alive throughout a team fight, you'll surely win with the damage you're providing on the right targets. So that's about everything you need to know about Orianna. She's a very unique champion with her ball movement, and getting off good shockwaves will decimate the enemy team and can literally turn lost games around. Don't forget to play safe and remember to farm. Farm makes Orianna useful in the mid-game objective fights, and that's the beginning of where she shines. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed, please consider subscribing and giving the video a thumbs up. I tried to give a full guide for Orianna into one short video, so hopefully you learned a few things. If you have any other champion recommendations, please leave a comment below and I'll gladly do them, even if they aren't a mid-lane champion. Thanks again for watching, and go get yourself some free elo for the most fun champions to play. So until next time, peace.